They call it an honor, to rule a world in the name of the Emperor, to wear the golden aquila upon your chest, and to hold in your hands the fates of billions. But the truth is far darker, for the title of planetary governor is no crown of glory. It is a death sentence disguised as power. Every sunrise on a hive world, trillions wake to choking smog, to the endless march of labor, to whispers of rebellion in the dark. Every sunset, the stars themselves seem to threaten, for beyond them lie Xenos, heretics and daemons, who hunger for the lives beneath your rule. And at the center of it all stands you, alone, the so-called ruler, the so-called lord, the pawn of an empire that does not forgive failure. So ask yourself, what does it mean to be chosen as a planetary governor? To inherit wealth, or to inherit damnation? To rule, or to wait for the blade? This is the truth of the Imperium's cruelest throne, and tonight we peel back its mask. Short call to action: if you find yourself drawn into the hidden truths of the Imperium, subscribe, share, and join us as we journey deeper into its shadows. They never tell you about the silence. When the ceremony ends, when the choirs finish their hymns and the incense smoke fades into the cold vaults of the cathedral, when the parchment is signed and the sigils of the Imperium pressed into wax, there is silence. A silence so deep, so suffocating, that it drowns even the thunder of the crowd outside. It is in that silence that you realize the truth. You are no longer a man, nor a woman, nor a child of any household. You are no longer a son, nor a daughter. You are no longer a servant of your family's ambition, nor even a free creature of the Imperium. You are something else now, something fragile and immense at once. You are a governor. The throne does not feel like triumph. It feels like weight, a crushing mantle pressed down upon your shoulders by the hand of an empire that does not know mercy. The ecclesiarchy calls it duty. The administratum calls it necessity. But when you sit upon the high seat of your palace and look down upon the trembling functionaries, the endless lines of scribes, the grim-faced generals and pale-eyed priests, you understand what it really is. It is a cage. The chains are invisible, but they are the tides that must be met, quotas that must be filled, oaths that must be sworn, rituals that must be upheld, and promises that can never be broken. Every demand carved into your soul like a knife, every expectation pressed upon you like lead. And the worst part, the part no one dares whisper aloud, is that none of it truly belongs to you. The palace is yours, but it is not yours. The armies are yours, but they are not yours. The wealth of a world pours through your hands like water, but you may not drink, because everything belongs to him. The Emperor of mankind, entombed upon the golden throne, a figure you will never see, a voice you will never hear, a master who rules not with love, nor with kindness, but with absence. And yet every moment of your reign is spent in fear of his gaze, though it may never fall upon you, and so you rule alone. Your council is large, of course, ministers, generals, inquisitors, agents, nobles who smile and bow while sharpening their knife. They crowd your court, each one offering advice, each one whispering about duty, faith and loyalty, yet none will share your burden. For if the world collapses, if the tithe is late, if rebellion rises, or heresy festers in the depths of your hive cities, it is not the council who will be dragged into the dungeons, it is you. You inherit not just the crown, but the fear of failing the Adeptus Terra, fear of the Inquisition's shadow, fear of the Arbite's judgment, fear of the Ecclesiarchy's zeal, and above all, the fear of your own people, because the masses are countless and you are one voice against a billion hungry mouths, one decree against a trillion restless hearts. How do you govern such a multitude? The truth is simple: you don't, you cannot, no mortal could. You sign orders you do not read. You issue commands you do not understand. You delegate powers to underlings who may already be corrupt. You pretend at control while knowing in your marrow that you are merely keeping the floodgates from breaking, not commanding the waters themselves. The burden is not power, it is pretense. Each morning begins the same way. You awaken in a bed too large, beneath banners too grand, surrounded by guards who would kill you at a single command. And yet, despite the splendor, you do not feel like a ruler. You feel like a prisoner. The air in the palace is heavy. stale with the smell of perfumed candles that never seem to mask the stench of fear. Every corridor echoes with whispers, every servant's glance carries questions, every shadow seems to hide accusation. And when you step onto the balcony to look upon your capital, what do you see? Smoke, endless smoke, hive stacks stretching into the heavens, their spires blackened by centuries of industry, rivers choked with ash, streets crawling with laborers, their faces hollow, their backs an ocean of humanity, so vast it drowns your vision. They live, they die, and they never see the sun, and they all belong to you. That is the burden, to look upon billions and know that their misery is both your responsibility and your only weapon. Because the Imperium does not ask you to care for them, it asks you to use them, to take their grain, their ore, their sons and daughters, and offer them to terror without question. And you know that if you falter, if you hesitate even for a moment, the consequences will be catastrophic. For above your throne hangs a sword, not of steel, but of decree, the decree of the Inquisition, the decree of the Arbites, the decree of every rival house that watches your every move. One word, one accusation, and your reign ends not with ceremony, but with fire. And yet, there is no escape. Some governors dream of fleeing, to abandon their worlds, to disappear into the void, to live as exiles beyond the Emperor's light. But such dreams are madness. There is no beyond. The Imperium stretches everywhere, and its enemies are worse than its punishment. Better to be executed in your palace, than to be torn apart by Xenos in some nameless sector. So you remain. You wear the crown. You play the role. You endure the burden. But in the quiet hours, when the palace grows still, when the chanting of the priests has faded, and even the ever-burning torches gutter low, you wonder if any governor has ever truly ruled, or if they were all like you, little more than caretakers of a crumbling empire, actors upon a stage whose script was written millennia ago. Perhaps the greatest burden is not fear, nor power, nor duty. Perhaps the greatest burden is futility, because deep inside, you already know how your story ends. The throne is a strange place. From afar, it seems like majesty, a seat carved from marble, gilded with gold, draped in banners of crimson and black. When the court gathers, it shines with a splendor meant to remind the people of your authority, your divine mandate, your place as the Emperor's chosen steward. But when you sit upon it, when you feel its cold weight beneath you, you realize it was never made for comfort, it was made for judgment. It was made to remind you that this is not your world, you are only its caretaker until you falter, and when you do, the throne will belong to the next victim. Governorship is not inherited, it is endured. Those who come before you leave behind their shadow. Their portraits line the halls, their deeds etched into tablets of stone. Yet, look closely and you will notice how quickly the details fade. Their names are forgotten, their victories rewritten, their monuments crumbling into dust. The Imperium remembers only the failure. It whispers of the governor, who could not meet the tithe, who was executed as a traitor. It recounts the one whose city fell to heresy, who was dragged before inquisitors and burned alive. It recalls the dynasty that grew too proud, too ambitious, and was erased overnight by the arbitrator's guns. You inherit their ghosts. You inherit their mistakes. Every decree you sign is haunted by their failures. Every choice weighed against the echoes of the dead. You rule not in freedom, but in fear of repeating their fate. Yet, the burden is not only fear, it is the endless responsibility of command. For the palace never sleeps. By day, 1,000 voices beg for your attention. Scribes bearing stacks of reports higher than a man, generals demanding reinforcements, priests warning of heresy, nobles pleading for favor. By night, the torches burn and the court still hums. Messengers arrive from the void, administratum officials demanding signatures, tithes, compliant. Even your dreams are not your own, for they are broken by the tolling of bells, the shouts of alarms, the cries of servants rushing through corridors. Sleep becomes a luxury, peace, a myth. And yet every demand, every petition, every desperate cry from the lips of your subjects, all funnels into a single truth. You cannot save them, you cannot feed the hungry, you cannot heal the sick, you cannot end the endless wars that drain your world of its lifeblood. You are a governor of the Imperium. Your task is not salvation, it is survival. The Imperium does not care for thriving worlds, it cares for loyal ones. That is why the burden is so heavy, because in your heart, in the secret place you dare not show, you may want to bring relief to your people. You may want to lessen their taxes, to ease their suffering, to give them a glimpse of a life beyond toil and smoke. But you cannot, for mercy is rebellion, and kindness is weakness. Should you defy the tithe, should you lessen the quotas, should you refuse the demands of terror, your world would not be praised, it would be scourged, and so you learn to harden your heart. You sign the orders that send thousands to die in labor camp. You approve the levies that tear sons and daughters from their homes to fight in wars they will never return from. You raise taxes until the poor starve, and the nobles grow restless, and each time you do, you bury the guilt deeper, until it festers into silence. For to be a governor is to kill with a pen, to murder with a seal of wax, to condemn with a whisper, and yet you are still afraid of your advisors, for they are not loyal to you but to their own ambition. Afraid of the priests, for their sermons hold more sway over the masses than your decrees. Afraid of the Arbites, who watch you like hawks, ready to strike at the first sign of weakness. Afraid of the Inquisition, whose shadow can fall upon your palace without warning, whose presence means your life is already measured in heartbeats. Even your guards are not beyond suspicion, for though they wear your colors, though they swear oaths to protect you, who knows which of them might betray you for coin, for power, or for the simple promise of survival? And in the end, what protection do you truly have? If rebellion comes, the mob will surge through your gate. If invasion comes, the skies will rain fire. If the Inquisition comes, not even your most loyal retinue can lift a blade in your defense. The burden of the throne is not only power, it is helplessness. The cruelest irony is that you will always be blamed, yet rarely be remembered. The people will curse your name as their crops fail, as their children are conscripted, as their cities collapse under endless war. And when your reign ends, whether by rebellion, execution, or slow decay, the Imperium will not preserve your legacy. Your name will be reduced to a line in a record, your deeds judged in numbers of shipments fulfilled, soldiers raised, faith maintained. The burden of the throne is not glory, it is erasure. You may rule for decades, but in the end, you will be forgotten. Another will rise to replace you, inheriting your world, your debts, your failures, your chains. They will sit upon the same cold throne, stare into the same suffocating silence, and feel the same weight pressing into their soul. And so the cycle continues, generation after generation. Governors rise and fall, their names washed away by the tide of history, their suffering hidden behind the mask of authority. To be a governor is not to rule, but to endure the burden until the burden breaks you, and it always breaks you, some sooner, some later, but all the same in the end. That is the first and final lesson of the throne. Not that power corrupts, nor that duty ennobles, but that power in the Imperium is nothing more than a curse disguised as honor, a curse you cannot refuse, cannot flee, cannot break. You may sit upon your throne of marble, you may wear your robes of silk, you may command your armies, sign your decrees, and bow to the demands of terror, but beneath it all, you are already doomed. The burden of the throne is not life, it is a slow, inevitable death. And as you sit, as the banners of the Imperium wave above you, and the distant thunder of war drums echo through the void, you feel it pressing ever deeper, the silence, the weight, the futility. It is the sound of chains you will never escape, the sound of a throne that was never yours, the sound of the burden that will crush you, as it has crushed all before you. When the decree is signed, when the seals of the administratum are pressed into parchment, and the Arbites proclaim your ascension, it feels as though you have inherited a jewel of the galaxy, a living sphere, a kingdom in the stars, bound to your neck. But step into its cities, its wastelands, its orbiting docks, and you will understand, you have not inherited a jewel, you have inherited scars. Every world in the Imperium bears them. Perhaps the scars lie across its surface, trenches carved by wars centuries old, still blackened with ash. Perhaps they lie deep beneath its crust, mines that have burrowed too far, rivers poisoned by toxins, caverns filled with the bones of forgotten laborers. Perhaps they linger in its people, noble houses, locked in feuds that began generations before you, cults that whisper prayers to forbidden gods in the shadowed corners of hive cities, memories of rebellions drowned in blood. A governor does not begin with a clean slate. He inherits debts carved into the marrow of the world. The administratum keeps records, of course. They hand you endless scrolls, bound in wax and steel, written in a language so twisted by bureaucracy it scarcely resembles speech. There you will find your quotas, your obligations, your planetary history summarized in cold, lifeless ink. But no record can truly describe the rot you inherit. For records speak of numbers, not of lies. They do not tell you that a noble house, listed as supportive, secretly dreams of seizing your throne. They do not mention that half the mining colonies are run by overseers more loyal to their own profit than to your crown. They do not whisper of the gangs who rule the underhives with blades sharper than any law. And so, on the day you inherit your world, you do not receive a treasure, you receive a labyrinth. Every passage is filled with shadows, every door hides another obligation, and the deeper you walk, the more you realize that you are not the master of this labyrinth, you are its prisoner. Take the noble houses. Their palaces are older than your dynasty, their banners older than your bloodline. They bow when you ascend, they swear loyalty with their lips, but in their eyes you see the truth. They do not serve you, they serve themselves. They whisper alliances in secret halls, trade favors with off-world merchants, and send their sons to marry into rival family. At times they seem more like predators circling their prey than servants awaiting your command. Or take the priesthood. The ecclesiarchy tells you the faith of your people is strong, that the shrines are filled, that the masses sing the emperor's hymns with one voice. But you know better. Faith is not unity. It is a fire, and fires can burn just as easily as they can warm. A single sermon can ignite a mob. A single priest, zealous or corrupted, can turn billions of souls against you. And then, there are the tithe masters. The Imperium does not care for your struggle. It does not care for your noble houses, your priesthoods, your starving masses. It cares only for quotas. You are handed a list. This much grain, this much ore, this many regiments, this many tanks. The numbers are carved in stone, written in blood, and they do not change. If your world has been racked by famine, if your mines have collapsed, if your hives are dying of plague, it does not matter. The tithe is owed. It must be delivered, and so you inherit a debt you can never truly pay. You inherit not wealth, but obligation, not peace, but woe. It is a cruel truth that the moment you take your throne, you are already behind. Your predecessors bled the world dry to meet their own tithes. They taxed, they conscripted, they stripped their hives to the bone, and yet, somehow, it was never enough. Their failures are now your inheritance, their debts your legacy. You will never be remembered for fixing them. You will only be blamed for letting them grow. That is the nature of inheritance. In the Imperium, it is not a gift. It is a chain that drags you deeper into a pit, dug by those who came before, a pit that no amount of labor or sacrifice can ever fill. And still, you must act as though the burden is yours alone. You stand before your people and speak of duty, of loyalty, of sacrifice. You pretend their suffering is shared, when in truth, it is forced upon them. You decree new levies, new taxes, new laws, and the people obey, because they have no choice. But each decree digs the pit deeper. Each tax breeds resentment. Each levy feeds rebellion. Each promise of loyalty grows thinner than the one before. The world you inherit is never stable. It is a fire smoldering beneath the surface, waiting for the moment to ignite. Some governors believe they can tame it. They believe they can outwit the nobles, outmaneuver the priesthood, outlast the tithe masters. They believe they can rule by strength, or by cunning, or by fear. But the world always wins, because its scars are older than you, older than your dynasty, older even than the Imperium's memory. And when you finally realize this, when you stand upon your balcony and look across a city that seems endless, when you see its spires crumbling even as its factories thunder, when you feel the ground beneath your palace tremble with the weight of millions toiling in misery, you understand the truth. You are not the master of your world. You are its caretaker, its warden, its prisoner. You inherit not only the world's wealth and power, but also its festering wounds, its endless debts, its curses, whispered in the dark. You inherit the hatred of its people, the greed of its nobles, the fanaticism of its priests,
the indifference of its masters in the stars. This is the inheritance of worlds, and it is the inheritance that will kill you. And when you inherit a planet, you inherit not just its surface, you inherit its history, whether you wish to or not. The people remember. They remember the governor, who promised mercy, and how his mercy was answered with famine. They remember the one who promised strength, and how his strength ended in blood upon the palace steps. They remember betrayals whispered in the shadows, purges carried out at dawn, cities set ablaze to root out rebellion. And they remember the tides, always the tides, the endless demands that drained their lives for a throne they would never see. Even if you try to rule with fairness, their memories will not let you. You are not a savior to them. You are the latest mask of an old oppressor, and yet, you must carry their hatred as part of your inheritance. It clings to every street, every hive tower, every whispered curse in the dark. When you travel through your cities in procession, when the banners are raised and the choirs sing, you see it in their eyes. They bow, yeah, they chant, yes, but behind their obedience lies silence, cold, resentful silence. They are not cheering you, they are enduring you. That is the inheritance of power. Adoration in ceremony, loathing in truth. The nobles too carry their memory. They remember feuds stretching back centuries, debts unpaid, insults unavenged. To you they offer fealty, to each other they sharpen their daggers. Their rivalries do not end when you take the throne, they sharpen beneath your reign, and as governor, you inherit their conflicts. You become the axis upon which their wars of influence turn, the prize for which they compete, the scapegoat upon whom they cast the blame when their schemes unravel. You are not their master, you are their hostage, and the priesthood, they too remember. Their faith may burn bright, but faith is a fire, with its own hunger. They recall the heresies of ages past, the cults that rose from the underhives, the purges carried out in holy fire. They do not trust you. To them, you are not a ruler, you are a potential heretic. One wrong word, one act of perceived blasphemy, one sign of weakness, and they will turn the mobs against you in the Emperor's name. Even your armies come to you burdened with memory, regiments broken by old wars, fleets scarred by battles fought long before you were born. They march at your command, but their loyalty is not to you, it is to survival, to the paymaster, to the dream of returning home alive. And when rebellion rises, when invasion looms, you will find that the memory of old wounds bleeds into the present, leaving your forces fractured before the first shot is fired. This is what it means to inherit a world. You inherit not its present but its past, and the past is a chain heavier than any crown. Administratum pretends otherwise. They send their emissaries with ledgers and quotas, as if a planet were nothing more than numbers, written in ink. To them, inheritance is simple, a new governor, a new signature, the same obligation. But they do not walk the streets, they do not feel the weight of hate in the air, nor hear the silence of crowds forced to cheer. They do not sense the world's memory, pressing against your rule like a tide that will not ebb, but you do. You cannot escape it. It follows you into the palace halls, into the feasts and councils, into your dreams. Every decision you make is colored by what came before, every word you speak twisted by echoes of the past. The more you try to rule, the more you realize you are not shaping the world. The world is shaping you, and it is shaping you into the same thing it shaped all those before you, a vessel for failure. For that is the cruelest inheritance of all, failure. Your predecessors failed, every one of them. Some lasted decades, some mere years, but all ended the same. Dead, erased, forgotten. Their worlds rebelled, or their nobles turned on them, or the Inquisition came calling. And when you study their portraits, their records, their ruins, you realize the truth. You are not different, you are walking the same path, step by step toward the same grave. You may pretend otherwise, you may tell yourself you are stronger, wiser, more cunning, but the inheritance of worlds is not one you can refuse. It clings to you like ash, it seeps into your blood like poison, it waits in the silence of your halls, in the eyes of your people, in the whispers of your court. And one day, it will claim you, as it has claimed all before you, because a governor never truly inherits a world. A governor inherits a death sentence. A single city can hold more souls than the entirety of Alterra in its early age. A single hive spire can stretch so high that clouds form within its broken levels, and still it remains only one of thousands across the planet. Everywhere you look, there are crowded markets, endless factories, abstacks crammed so tightly that the walls themselves seem to groan beneath the weight, streets that never sleep, because when one shift ends, another begins, and the tide of humanity never ceases. This is what you govern, not a world of landscapes, seas and skies, but a world of humanity stacked upon itself like a living mountain, each life burning with need, each life demanding sustenance, each life adding to the unrelenting weight upon your shoulders. The administratum does not see lives, they see numbers. They send quotas, schedules, demands, 1 billion tons of grain, 50 million regiments, 12 billion lasguns, cold figures, written in ink, as though each stroke of the quill does not cost countless lives, but you see them. You see the faces in the crowd when you ride in procession. You hear the chants, half-hearted, rising from throats that know only hunger. You smell the air of the habs, sour with rot and smoke, heavy with the stench of too many bodies pressed too close together, and you know the truth. You cannot save them. You cannot even feed them all. The harvests of a dozen agri worlds are shipped into your ports, yet still the masses starve, the manufactoria churn without pause, yet still the demand for arms is never met. For every soul you clothe, feed and shelter, 100 more fall into shadow, forgotten by decree, ignored by necessity. You inherit billions, but you command nothing, because hunger commands them, fear commands them, desperation commands them. You cannot look at a crowd without wondering how long it will remain a crowd before it becomes a mob. You cannot pass through a market without imagining how quickly the shouts of trade might become the screams of riot. Billions of souls mean billions of potential sparks, and your world is soaked in fuel. The priests tell you the emperor guides them. They say, his light holds the masses steady, that their faith binds them in obedience, but you know faith is as fragile as bread. Starve them long enough, and sermons mean nothing. Promise them salvation long enough without delivering, and even saints become hollow. So you walk among billions, and you see not their devotion, but their hunger. Hunger for bread, hunger for justice, hunger for freedom, hunger for anything other than the endless grind of survival. And you realize, governance is not ruling, governance is feeding. If you feed them, they obey. If you starve them, they revolt. That is the equation. That is the simplicity at the heart of a world of billions. Yet even in feeding them, you lose, because food is not infinite. Grain spoils, shipments fail, pirates raid the convoys, warp storms delay the freighters, corruption bleeds, supplies dry before they ever reach your storehouses. And when shortages come, and they always come, you will be the one blamed, not the storms, not the pirates, not the faceless administratum clerks. The crowd does not see the galaxy, the crowd sees only you. When bread runs out, they do not chant against terror, they chant against you. They do not march upon the administratum, they march upon your palace gates. And so the billions are not just a burden, they are a restless, endless seething threat. Every family you fail to feed becomes a seed of rebellion. Every child that dies in the underhives becomes a ghost that haunts your reign. Every riot you crush with gunfire plants a memory in the hearts of those who survive, and they will remember. You cannot escape them, you cannot kill them all, you cannot even silence them, you can only delay them, appease them, shift their anger from one day to the next, like a man trying to hold back the tide with his bare hands. That is the weight of billions, not their loyalty, not their prayers, but their hunger, their desperation, their anger. And you, governor, must carry it. Every decision you make is measured against the lives of billions. Every decree you issue echoes not in halls of marble, but in alleys where mothers cradle starving children. Every misstep is magnified 1,000-fold, until it shakes the very foundations of your rule. The nobles you can outmaneuver, the priests you can placate, the generals you can command, but the billions, They are a beast you cannot slay, a tide you cannot command, a fire you cannot extinguish. They are not your subjects, they are your executioners, waiting for the moment when patience ends and fury begins. And when it comes, when the billions rise, no fortress will save you, no army will hold against them. For what is a regiment compared to a planet? What is a palace compared to a hive? What is a governor compared to the fury of billions?
At first it begins as a murmur, a whisper in the hive markets, where bread runs thin and the merchants shout louder to cover their empty stalls. A chant echoing in the manufactoria, where workers cough black soot and curse the overseers who demand 12-hour shifts without pause. A rumor spreading through the hapstacks that another freighter was lost to the warp, that the grain will not come, that this month the rations will be halved again. You hear these murmurs in your reports, written in careful words: unrest, disruption, localized dissent. The language of the administratum turns fury into paperwork, but you know what it truly means. It means the tide is rising. One voice becomes 100, 100 become 1,000, 1,000 become 1,000,000, and then the city shakes, not with industry but with anger. The mob is born. It is not neat, it is not organized. It is hunger given form, fear turned into violence. The masses pour into the streets with makeshift weapons, chanting words too raw to be contained by parchment. They are not soldiers, but there are too many of them to dismiss. Not trained, but more numerous than your regiments could ever hope to be. They swarm the hab blocks, they set fire to the storehouses, they storm the markets, ripping food from stalls, trampling one another in desperation. And soon, the mob forgets why it began. It forgets hunger, it forgets grain, it remembers only rage. And you, Governor, must answer. You summon the guard, men and women born of the same streets as those they must now face. They stand in their flak armor, las guns held steady, as the tide of their own people surges toward them. Some hesitate, some lower their weapons, for they see their own blood in the faces of the crowd, their mothers, their brothers, their children, but hesitation is treason. So you order the first volley. The air cracks with the discharge of 1,000 las guns. The mob screams, recoils, falters, bodies collapse upon the streets, smoke rising from charred wounds. For a moment you think it might end there, that the mob will break, scatter, vanish into the alleys, but it does not, because now there is blood, and blood changes everything. The mob roars with fury, no longer begging for bread but demanding vengeance. Stones and firebombs fly against armored lines, crude blades flash in the smoke. The guard holds formation, but already men are dragged down into the crowd, their screams swallowed by the sea of bodies. You watch from your palace, the reports flowing in: District 12 lost, the underhive aflame, the railways cut. Every message drips with disaster, and still you cannot stop it. You can send more soldiers, you can order more volleys, you can turn streets into rivers of blood, but every drop spilled feeds the fire, every body fuels the fury, and then comes the moment every governor dreads, the moment when soldiers refuse. They are not machines, they are not servitors, they are flesh and blood. Just as the mob is flesh and blood, they are asked to kill their kin, to slaughter their neighbors, to fire upon the very womb that birthed them. Some obey, but others falter. Some turn their weapons aside, and some join the mob. That is how empires collapse, not from enemies without, but from fractures within. The billions are not a passive weight. They are a force of nature, a storm that can break walls, topple palaces, unmake rulers, and when they rise, you must decide how far you are willing to go. Do you call exterminatus, to burn your world to ash, rather than lose it to rebellion? Do you beg the Inquisition for aid, knowing their aid comes in purges and fire? Do you cling to the hope that the ecclesiarchy will stir the masses back into faith before the flames consume all? Or do you stand alone in your palace, as the gates fall and the mob pours through, chanting not your name in praise, but in condemnation? The truth is cruel. No governor rules their billions. They only delay the moment when the billions remember their own strength. And when that moment comes, no crown, no title, No throne will protect you, only the Emperor's mercy, and in the grim darkness of the far future, even that is rare. The mob is chaos made flesh, and though it terrifies you, at least you understand it. You can hear it roar beyond the palace gates. You can watch it rise and fall like a storm. But terror is different. Terror does not roar. Terror whispers. Terror does not rise in fire. Terror grinds in silence. It is not a storm, but a weight, a constant suffocating weight that presses down upon your shoulders until you can no longer breathe, for you are not free. You may wear the title of planetary governor, may command armies, fleets, noble houses, even priests, but above you stands the administratum, the faceless machine that spans the galaxy, and it watches, it records, it demands. Its chains are made of parchment, its shackles are written in ink. The tithes arrive not as polite requests, but as iron decrees. 2 billion tons of grain, 300 million lasguns, 10% of your population for the guard. The orders fall upon your desk like falling stones, and each one must be obeyed. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. The clerks of terror do not care that your fields are barren this season. They do not care that pirates choke your trade routes, that warp storms swallow your freighters whole. They do not care that your people starve, or that your armies are stretched thin. To them your world is a number, a column on a ledger, a quota on a scroll. And if you fail, failure is treason. A single missing shipment of lasguns brands you unreliable. A shortfall in grain marks you negligent. Too few recruits for the guard, and suddenly your loyalty is questioned. The ink turns to suspicion. The suspicion turns to accusation. And accusation in the Imperium is as deadly as any plague. The Inquisition does not wait for explanations. They arrive with fire and chains, demanding to know why your planet falters. The Adeptus Arbites declare martial law in your streets, not to protect you but to protect the tithe, for the tithe must flow, always. The tithe must flow. You are governor, yes, but you are also prisoner. Every edict you pass, every decision you make, every ration you cut, is shaped by terror's demands. You may wish to feed your starving millions, but if the administratum demands that grain, you must give it up. You may wish to spare your sons from endless war, but if terror demands them, you must send them into the maw. If you defy, you are branded heretic. If you fail, you are branded incompetent. If you hesitate, you are branded traitor. There is no mercy in parchment. And so you sign the decrees. You strip your own world bare to meet quotas that will never end. You watch as your storehouses empty, as your manufactoria burn through the last of their resources, as your mines collapse from overwork. And still, more orders arrive, always more. Because terror does not see your world as yours, it sees it as theirs. Your world is not a home, but a cog, not a kingdom, but a furnace. A place to be drained until it withers, then discarded when it can give no more. And you are the caretaker of this extraction, nothing more. The irony is cruel. You sit upon a throne, but you are chained tighter than any worker in the manufactoria. At least they know their labor will feed their families, if only for a day. Your labor feeds a machine so vast, it does not even know your name. Yet you cannot rebel. You cannot refuse, for the Imperium is not just terror. It is the Arbites, who will crush dissent. It is the Ecclesiarchy, who will condemn you as faithless. It is the Inquisition, who will burn you before you can even protest your innocence. So you smile at the parade. You deliver speeches about loyalty, faith, and duty. You tell your people the Emperor protects, that their sacrifice is holy, that their suffering has meaning, and perhaps, in some hidden corner of your heart, you almost believe, because to govern under terror's chains, you must believe in something. Otherwise, the weight will break you, for the chains are not just on your wrists, they are on your mind, your soul, your very identity. You begin to think in quotas, to dream in numbers. You look at a field of grain and do not see food for the hungry. You see tonnage. You look at a nursery of children and do not see futures. You see regiments, The chains of terror do not merely bind you, they reshape you, until one day, you no longer remember what it was like to rule freely, until one day, you can no longer imagine a world that is not bound to parchment and quotas, until one day, you do not question the chains, because you have become part of them, and perhaps that is terror's greatest cruelty, not that it binds you, not that it breaks you, but that, in time, it convinces you to bind yourself. The chains are not only ink and parchment, they are eyes, eyes that watch you at every banquet, every parade, every whispered conversation in your marble halls, eyes that belong not to your servants, but to terror. You may think yourself master of your palace, but within its walls move agents you did not appoint. The administratum seeds clerks and scribes in every chamber, their quills scratching endless reports. The ecclesiarchy posts confessors near your throne, their sermons dripping with loyalty, while their ears drink every word you say. The Arbites stand in your courtyards, armored judges, whose true loyalty is not to you, but to law as written in terror's vault. Even in your private chambers, you do not sleep free, for shadows linger there as well. The whispers of the Officio Medicae remind you that your physician's loyalty lies with higher power. Your guards, the ones sworn to protect your life, are selected from regiments already tested for obedience to the Imperium, not to you. And then there are the spies you cannot see, the ones who sit at feasts, pretending to be noble guests, the ones who laugh in your court, their words light but their hearts cold, the ones who move unseen through the hives, blending with beggars and merchants alike, sending back reports on the whispers of rebellion. Every word you speak is weighed, every gesture is measured, every decree is dissected, for the Imperium does not trust you. Why should it? Governors are powerful, yes, but power breeds ambition. Too many times has a governor declared themselves king, or worse, emperor. Too many times have worlds broken faith, their rulers seeking independence or heresy. Terror never forgets betrayal, and so you live in suspicion's cage. The Arbites are its bars. These enforcers do not serve you, they serve only the Lex Imperial. Their armor is unyielding, their judgment absolute. When riots spread, they march into the streets, not to protect your throne, but to protect the Emperor's law, and if that law declares you guilty, they will march into your palace with the same cold efficiency. It is said that an Arbites does not bend knee to kings, lords or even governors. They bend only to law. To see them lined in your throne room, visors dark, weapons ready, is to know your title means nothing to them. To them you are no more sacred than the lowest beggar. Both exist only to obey. Both are punished when they fail. Yet the Arbites are merciful compared to the shadow that follows them. The Inquisition. You do not summon them. You do not command them. They arrive as they please, cloaked in authority beyond measure. One word from their lips outweighs every decree you have ever signed. When an inquisitor comes, the air itself grows heavy. Priests tremble, nobles bow, generals dare not raise their eyes, and you who are called the ruler of this world, must kneel like a child before them, for they are judge, jury and executioner, all in one. They do not ask why quotas failed. They do not ask why heresy whispers in the underhives. They demand answers. They demand results. And if your words fail to satisfy, if your records do not align, if your explanations ring false, then they do not hesitate. One gesture, and you are nothing, dragged from your throne, branded traitor, burned as example, and the cruelest truth, your people will cheer, for the billions do not love you. They fear you. They resent you. They see you as the hand that signs their rations away, the mouth that delivers empty promises, the throne that watches as they starve. When the Inquisition declares you heretic, the mob believes it. They rejoice to see you fall. That is terror's greatest power, not the fleets, not the army, not the Arbites or the Inquisition. Terror's greatest weapon is that it makes your people hate you more than they hate it. The administratum bleeds them dry, but you are the face they see. The ecclesiarchy demands their faith, but you are the one who preaches duty. The guard takes their sons and daughters,
but you are the one who signs the levy. You are the mask of their suffering. And so when terror tightens its chains, it is you who bears the hatred, you who bleeds, you who falls. The chains are perfect, because they do not simply hold you down, they turn your own people into the links. They make you the villain in their eyes, the tyrant in their hunger, the betrayer in their despair. And when you fall, as most governors do, the Imperium does not mourn, it replaces you. Another is chosen, another is crowned, another is chained, and the cycle begins again. The mob roars, the Arbeits march, the Inquisition burns, the Administratum sends another tithe, the world turns, endlessly drained, endlessly bound, and you realize your reign was never yours, it was always theirs. A governor's world is never still, even in peace. There is no peace. The chains of terror tighten from above, the billions press from below, but all around are the enemies waiting to strike. Some wear the masks of neighbors, whispering sedition in the dark, others descend from the stars, claws and fire, tearing at the sky. All are the same in the end, threats you must face, with resources already stretched to breaking. The enemy within is the most insidious. Heresy begins not with armies, but with whispers, a sermon twisted by forbidden knowledge, a relic unearthed that should have remained buried, a desperate soul who turns to powers unspoken, trading faith for promises of strength. At first it is nothing more than a spark in the underhives, too small for nobles to notice, too quiet for priests to condemn, but sparks grow. They spread from worker to worker, from family to family, until suddenly the manufactoria is painted with symbols you dare not name, and chants echo that make the air itself grow heavy. And when the cults rise, they do so with terrifying speed. One day your guards report a minor disturbance, the next, an entire district burns with unholy fire, and thousands flock to the banners of false gods. Men and women who once worked your factories, now march with weapons stolen from your own storehouses. Even children, faces painted in blood, scream oaths to the dark. This is the enemy within, the enemy that was once your people. You cannot trust the billions, for any crowd might conceal cultists. You cannot trust your nobles, for ambition often dances too close to heresy. You cannot even trust your generals, for some find the promises of forbidden powers too alluring to resist. So you turn to fire, purge the hives, burn the manufactoria, seal the undercities and let them starve. You sacrifice tens of thousands to save millions, but every order leaves a scar. The people hate you for it, and yet they do not see that the alternative was worse. They never see. And just when you think the cults have been broken, when the last sigil is scrubbed from the walls, and the last scream fades in the smoke, another threat arrives. The enemy without. They never wait. They never strike when you are ready. They strike when you are weakest, when the last rebellion has drained your guard, when the tithe has taken your food, when your fleets are scattered across the void, orcs descending like a green tide, their laughter rolling like thunder across your field, tyrannids, blotting out the sun, endless Teuton and hunger devouring every living thing, Eldar raiders slipping through the stars, cutting into your world like knives in the dark. And there are worse things, always worse things, some you cannot even name, because to speak of them is to risk madness. Daemons clawing through the veil, their voices breaking sanity. Necron legions rising from tombs you did not even know slept beneath your soil, or the cold silence of Tau diplomacy, soft words and gentle promises that rot loyalty from within faster than any bullet. The Imperium demands you hold, always hold. It matters not if your guard are half-trained conscripts. It matters not if your ships are rusting relics. It matters not if your manufactoria are already choking from overuse. You are governor. Your duty is to stand against whatever comes, with whatever remains. And if you fall, then the Inquisition will arrive demanding why. The Administratum will tally your failure in numbers. Terror will not weep, but your people will. They will weep as they are dragged in chains to labor camps. They will weep as they are culled to make examples. They will weep as the ruins of their homes smolder, proof that their governor failed. And in their weeping,
They will curse your name, for they do not curse the orc who swung the axe, nor the Tyrannid that devoured their kin, nor the Eldar raider who vanished into the night. They curse you, always you. You were their shield, their wall, their voice, and when the wall breaks, it is the wall they blame. Thus, the enemies within and without become one. Both devour you, both make you hated, both leave you alone, staring at a galaxy that never ceases to close in. You are not ruler, you are sacrifice, and every enemy, whether born in the underhives or descending from the stars, sharpens the knife that is forever at your throat. You cannot silence a cult with words, nor can you stop an orc horde with parchment. To survive, you must gamble, and every gamble costs more than it gives. The first bargains are always with your own. The nobles demand favors, more land, fewer tithes, seats in your council. At first you refuse, because you must, but then a rebellion surges in the hives, and suddenly you need their private militias, you need their money, you need their ships, and so you give them what they want. Piece by piece, your world is carved away, not by enemies, but by those who smile at your table, and they never stop. Once you have given, you cannot take back. They demand more, always more. They know you are desperate. They know you cannot say no. And in time, you look upon your planet, and realize that it is no longer yours. It belongs to those you once thought lesser, but who now hold you by the throat. But the bargains do not end with nobles. The ecclesiarchy watches. The priests smile as they preach obedience, but their sermons grow sharper when your loyalty falters. They are powerful, for faith is more dangerous than any weapon. A guard regiment may fight and die, but it is faith that keeps the hives obedient, that keeps the billions working despite starvation and grief. And so you bow to the priests. You give them shrines, cathedrals, fleets to ferry their mission. You nod as they denounce sinners in your court, even when those sinners are your own allies. Because without faith, your world burns from within faster than any enemy can burn it from without. But the priests are never enough, because one day, the sky cracks and war falls upon you. And when that day comes, you gamble again. You send messengers to nearby governors, begging for aid. Most do not answer. Some laugh at your weakness. A rare few offer support, but only for a price. They demand your trade routes, your minerals, your army, and you give them, because survival is worth more than pride. But in the giving, you bind yourself. You may win the war, but your world becomes theirs. Another chain, another collar, another bargain that bleeds you dry. And when no allies remain, when the Imperium is too far to hear your cries, there are still darker bargains to make. You know the stories. Every governor knows. Stories of men and women who turned to powers beyond the Emperor's light, who called upon daemons in the night, or swore oaths to Xenos for salvation. You tell yourself you would never do the same. You tell yourself you are stronger, until the day the enemy is at your gates, until the day the guard are dead, the walls are ash, and the people scream your name in fury, until the day you realize that survival is no longer possible without sacrifice. And so the question comes, will you betray the Imperium to save your world? Some do. Many do. They whisper to shadows. They send envoys to Xena. They trade one form of damnation for another, because the galaxy is built on damnation. And when they are caught, the Inquisition arrives. The world burns. Entire cities are put to the torch, not for what they did, but for what their governor dared to attempt. For in the Imperium, the sin of one man is the death of billions. So you gamble, always gamble, and every gamble is a knife. Sometimes you survive. Sometimes your name is whispered with reluctant respect in the halls of terror, as the governor who held against impossible odds. But even then, there is no triumph. Because victory in the Imperium is only survival. There is no celebration, no relief, only the knowledge that another enemy waits just beyond the stars, and that you will gamble again and again, until either your enemies destroy you, or your bargains do. That it is worth every compromise, every coin of loyalty spent, every oath broken. But as the years drag on, you begin to see the truth. Survival is not life. It is a slow death. The bargains you make carve pieces out of you. A tithe postponed means more suffering later. A noble appeased means another voice at your throat tomorrow. A favor given to a priest becomes an altar you can never tear down. Each deal is a brick in a prison you build with your own hands. And then come the lies. At first they are small. You tell your people that the guard regiments sent to their world will return. You know they never will. You tell the miners their quotas will ease, even as you raise them higher. You tell your family, if you still have one, that this war will end, that peace will come. You know it is a lie, but the lie feels merciful. Soon the lies grow larger. You claim your loyalty is absolute, while secretly begging for aid from those you despise. You promise safety, while knowing you cannot give. You kneel before the ecclesiarchy, before the mechanicus, before the Inquisition, whispering oaths of devotion that hollow your soul with every word. And the people, they do not forget. They watch their children starve. They watch their brothers march to war and never return. They see the truth behind your promises, and though they do not speak it, though they bow when ordered, their silence is a knife pressed against your back. For when the time comes, when the walls shake, when the sky falls, they will remember your lies, and they will rise against you. Every governor dreads the uprising more than the invasion, because the enemy outside is known. It wears a face, an orc, a xeno, a heretic, but the enemy inside wears no face. It is every worker, every servant, every soldier, who once swore fealty and now hungers for your fall. And when they rise with fire. So you lie more. You tell them that the emperor hears their prayers. You tell them that the next tithe is the last. You tell them that salvation is near, though you know salvation does not exist. The lies pile high until you can no longer tell where truth ends and deception begins. And in the silence of night, when you sit alone in your chamber, the thought comes to you like a whisper. Perhaps survival is the cruelest fate of all, because to survive as a governor is not to live. It is to die slowly, hollowed out by compromises, until nothing remains of the person you once were. You remember the day you first wore the signet of office. You remember the pride, the honor, the belief that you could rule with strength and justice, that you could be different, that you would not fall to corruption, to fear, to cowardice, that you would lead with truth. But now, you are a shadow of that dream, a puppet pulled by strings you cannot cut, a voice that speaks words you do not believe, a soul bound by chains you forged yourself. And worse still, you realize the galaxy does not care. The Imperium does not thank you. It does not honor you. It does not see your sacrifices. To Terra you are only a name in a ledger, a statistic in a report, a tool to be used until it breaks. If you succeed, no laurels await you. If you fail, only fire. That is the true cost of survival, not the compromises, not the lies, not even the betrayals. The true cost is knowing that none of it matters, that no matter what you do, the galaxy will not remember you. And yet, you go on, because what choice do you have? If you fall, billions fall with you. If you give up, your world dies. And so you cling to survival, even as it strips you bare, even as it hollows your soul, even as it reduces you to nothing but a figurehead, chained to a throne that burns beneath you. This is why governors go mad. This is why some turn to forbidden powers, or embrace the whisper of heresy, not out of malice, not even out of greed, but out of desperation, out of the unbearable weight of survival, out of the knowledge that sometimes death would be kinder than life. And so in the end, survival becomes the cruelest irony. You survive not because you are strong, but because you are bound. You survive not for yourself, but for an Imperium that will never love you, never thank you, never forgive you. You survive until survival itself feels like damnation. And in that moment, you begin to wonder, perhaps the true enemy was never the orc, the heretic, or the alien. Perhaps the true enemy is survival itself. Every reign has a breaking point. For some it comes with the shattering of their wall. For others, it comes in silence, when the last thread of their will snaps, and they realize the throne they sit upon has become a coffin. When the breaking comes,
There are only 3 paths left. The first is damnation. It begins with a whisper, soft as breath against the ear, a promise that all the weight, all the hunger, all the endless burden of survival can be lifted if only you surrender, not to terror, not to faith, but to powers older and darker, patient as shadow. A governor, under siege, might kneel in their chapel, praying to the emperor for salvation. And when no answer comes, when the walls quake, and the people scream, they begin to pray to anything that will listen, and something always listens. It is said that chaos does not corrupt through fire or fury, but through mercy, the mercy of relief, the mercy of escape, the mercy of giving the governor what terror never could, freedom. A governor who bows to that mercy lives a little longer. Their enemies may be swept aside in storms of impossible power. Their armies may rise, twisted and monstrous, no longer men, but something greater or something less. And for a fleeting moment, they may believe they have saved their world. But chaos is not salvation, it is consumption. A governor who falls to it does not become a savior. They become a beacon of damnation. The Inquisition will come, the Space Marines will come, and when they arrive, they will not distinguish between traitor and victim. They will burn the world to ash. Because mercy is not a word the Imperium knows. That is one fate. The second is rebellion. Some governors cannot endure the chains any longer. They look upon the Imperium not as salvation, but as tormentor. They see terror as a parasite, bleeding their world dry, in the name of a god who does not answer, a bureaucracy that does not care, and so they rise against it. It begins with whispers in the court, a refusal to send the next tithe, a decision to keep their armies close instead of offering them to the Minotaurum. At first it is quiet, hidden, but rebellion is fire, and fire cannot be hidden for long.
Soon banners are raised, proclamations shouted, and soldiers march under a new cause. For a brief and terrible time, a governor may feel free. They may taste what it is to rule for themselves, not for distant terror. They may even believe their people are with them, but rebellion in the Imperium is suicide. There are no free worlds, there are only loyal ones, and dead ones. And when the news reaches the High Lords, when the word secession is spoken in the halls of terror, the punishment is absolute. The Astra Militarum comes first, regiments by the thousands. Then, if the rebellion lingers, the angels of death descend. And finally, if the governor's defiance endures longer still, there are worse things, the kind of punishment whispered about in terrified tones. Exterminatus spoken like a curse. No governor survives rebellion. Only worlds die with them. And yet, many choose it, because in rebellion there is at least one moment of truth. One moment where they stand not as slaves of the Imperium, but as rulers in their own right. Even if it lasts only a heartbeat, it is a heartbeat free. The third path is loyalty. It is the rarest. It is also the most terrible. A loyal governor does not fall to whispers. They do not rise in rebellion. They kneel again and again, bleeding themselves dry to keep their world alive in the Emperor's name. They sacrifice their children, their armies, their very souls, to the endless hunger of terror, and in return, they receive nothing, no thanks, no relief, only more demands. To choose loyalty is to choose a slow crucifixion, and yet, some endure it. History remembers them rarely, for the Imperium does not care for governors who obey, but in hidden archives, in the records of dead scribes, there are names that linger, governors who ruled through famine and plague, invasion and heresy, and never once turned away. They died broken, forgotten, erased from memory, but their worlds lived. Perhaps that is the noblest path, or perhaps it is the cruelest of all, and so the governor sits upon their throne, staring into the abyss of these 3 fates: damnation, rebellion, or loyalty. Each path is a death. The only difference is the shape of the tomb. The galaxy calls it governance. The truth is simpler. It is execution, drawn out across a lifetime. And in the silence of that throne room, with banners torn and cities burning, one question lingers in every governor's heart: was it ever worth it? The throne does not sit in the governor's hall alone. It follows them into their chambers, into their meals, into their dreams. For a governor is never only a ruler. They are a parent, a spouse, a child of some long-forgotten line. The blood they bear carries promises, debts, and enemies. And as the throne consumes the world, it consumes the family that shares it. At first, they try to protect them. The children are given tutors, their rooms sealed with guards, their eyes kept from the endless scrolls of decrees and report. They are told they are safe, that their future is bright, that one day they too will serve the Imperium with honor. The governor watches them laugh in gardens lit by artificial suns, and for a fleeting moment believes it is true. But the truth always finds a way inside. Children hear the whispers of servants, of riots in the streets, of soldiers dying by the thousands. They see the fear etched into the faces of the guards who protect them. They feel the distance in their parents' eyes, the coldness that grows with every council meeting, every sleepless night, every decree signed in blood, and slowly the laughter fades. The spouse too begins to wither. They were once a confidant, perhaps even a source of comfort, but the governor cannot speak the full truth to them. Not the hunger, not the desperation, not the crushing weight of impossible choices. To share such burdens would be to break them, and so silence grows like a wall between them, until love becomes duty, and duty becomes a chain. The family becomes prisoners of the throne. They cannot leave, for they are too valuable. Assassins wait in every shadow. Kidnappers hunt for ransom. Cultists plot to use them as pawns. Every movement, every breath, every smile must be watched. What life is that, but another form of captivity? And yet, for all the suffering of family, the cruelest chains are those that bind the governor's own mind. The throne does not allow rest. Dreams become visions of burning cities, of endless tithes, of hollow-eyed soldiers marching to their death. The governor wakes to the sound of phantom screams, to the scent of smoke that lingers only in memory. Sleep offers no peace, only torment. Paranoia seeps in. Who can be trusted? The servants who bow too low, the advisors who smile too easily, the nobles who arrive bearing gifts. Every word becomes a blade hidden in silk. Every meeting is a test of loyalty. And the governor, once surrounded by allies, finds themselves alone in a hall filled with enemies who dare not show their teeth, yet sharpen them all the same. In time, the governor begins to fracture. Some retreat into silence, their words few, their eyes hollow. They speak only in decrees, as though language itself is wasted on anything but survival. Others rage, lashing out at servants, family, even loyal friends, their fury a mask for fear. And some turn to poisons of the mind, narcotics, stims, forbidden pleasures whispered through the darker corners of the hive, anything to numb the weight for just a moment. But there is no escape. The throne allows no peace. The throne allows no self. For in the Imperium, a governor is not a person. They are a symbol. They are the emperor's hand, stretched across a world, and symbols cannot afford to be human. So the family withers, the bloodline cracks, the mind corrodes, and the governor, once a soul of flesh and spirit, becomes an empty vessel, filled only with the weight of survival, with the endless burden of command. And still the galaxy demands more, because in the Imperium, to sit the throne is not to rule. It is to sacrifice everything you are, and everyone you love, upon an altar that will never thank you, never forgive you, never even remember your name. This is the weight of the throne, and it breaks all who bear it. But blood is supposed to bind. But for a governor, blood is another battlefield. The family they once swore to protect becomes a liability the moment they take the throne. Their children are no longer sons or daughters. They are heirs, pawns to be married into noble houses, pieces to be moved across a board of politics sharper than any war. Their spouse ceases to be partner and becomes figurehead, the face of loyalty. The Imperium demands be shown at public gatherings, whether love remains or not, and enemies notice. Assassins slip through palace corridors not with daggers, but with words. A noble friend whispers of a marriage alliance that could ease tithes, or worsen them. If refused, a rival governor offers the hand of their child, knowing refusal would be seen as insult. Even the ecclesiarchy demands sons and daughters pledged to the priesthood, for the emperor's glory, though in truth it is to secure the church's power, and when bargains are refused, enemies do not hesitate to take what they want. Kidnappings are common. In the underhives, gangs wait for the chance to ransom a governor's blood. Cultists target children not only to leverage power, but to corrupt them, turning them into weapons against their own house. There are stories too many of heirs raised in secret cults, revealed only when their corruption poisons the family from within. What worse punishment than to see your own blood, your own child, lifted as a banner for rebellion, their face plastered on walls as the true savior of the people. And it is not only enemies who wield the family as weapon. The Imperium itself sharpens them into blade. The Inquisition does not hesitate to threaten kin if loyalty wavers. An Inquisitor's words are soft, but the meaning clear. Your family's safety depends upon your faith. One whisper, one doubt, one hesitation, and loved ones vanish into black ships. No record, no grave, only the Astra Militarum, too, demands their pound of flesh. Sons and daughters pressed into command, leading regiments to war far from home. Some return broken, most do not return at all, and yet refusal is not an option. To deny is to risk being branded traitor. Even terror itself uses blood as chain. A family name carries debt, centuries-old oaths, unpaid tithes, forgotten failures. A governor inherits not only power, but the ghosts of ancestors, and the High Lords never forget. The sins of the father, the mother, the dynasty are visited upon the children without mercy, and so the governor watches as their family is eaten alive. The laughter of youth gives way to silence, their children no longer children, but political hostages dressed in finery. Their spouse becomes a shadow, their love turned into duty. Even siblings, cousins, uncles, all become tools. A family gathering is not reunion, but negotiation. Each glance weighed, each word another bargain. The throne poisons blood, but the cruelest poison of all is suspicion, because the governor knows that the closer the blood, the sharper the knife. Nobles plot rebellion with whispers of a better heir. Advisors speak of replacing weakness with strength, citing dynastic tradition. Sometimes even children, worn thin by duty, by fear, by the endless burden, begin to dream of the throne themselves. History is filled with governors assassinated not by strangers, but by kin. A poisoned goblet from a nephew, a dagger from a daughter's hand. Trust becomes impossible, and in that impossibility, the family becomes a curse. The governor sits alone, surrounded by those who share their name, their blood, their house, and yet they feel more alone than ever, because every smile may hide betrayal, every embrace may mask ambition, every heir may become executioner. And in the silence of the governor's chambers, where banners hang heavy and portraits of ancestors stare down with painted eyes, the truth finally sinks in. The family is not protection. The family is the final weapon the throne turns against them. And once it is unsheathed, no one is spared. There comes a moment when the governor realizes the throne has stolen everything. Not their armies, not their wealth, not their power. Those are tools, shifting, fragile but replaceable. What the throne takes is far more intimate. It takes the faces of those they once loved. A son departs for war and never returns. A daughter is married off, her smile brittle as she vanishes into another house, another life. A spouse grows silent, their voice fading until the bedchamber is as cold as the council hall. Brothers, sisters, cousins, scattered across the galaxy, or buried in graves marked only with numbers. At first, the governor mourns, truly mourns. They drink deeply, rage bitterly, grieve loudly in private chambers, but grief, like hope, cannot last forever under such weight. In time, mourning becomes numbness. A death no longer shocks. A betrayal no longer surprises. Even the faces of children fade, replaced by ledgers,
reports and endless parchments that tell of quotas and blood spilled. The family becomes memory, then echo, then nothing, and yet the paranoia never fades. Because the throne teaches one truth above all: everyone is suspect. The governor begins to see conspiracies in every word. A servant lingers a second too long with the wine. A guard shifts his eyes to the side. An advisor suggests easing taxes. Was that mercy or rebellion disguised? The spouse speaks of love. Was that comfort or manipulation? Sleep becomes impossible. Meals go untouched. The governor walks the palace halls at night, shadowed by guards who fear them more than protect them. And when at last sleep comes, it is filled with nightmares of poison, daggers, fire, and betrayal. Madness creeps in. Some governors begin to see ghosts of their family, a lost child at the foot of the throne, a dead spouse's voice echoing in council chamber. They speak to empty air, answering questions no one else hears. Advisors whisper of their instability, yet none dare act, for even a mad governor holds power, and the mad strike hardest when cornered. Others take another path: cruelty. If trust is impossible, then loyalty must be carved by fear. Family is imprisoned for protection. Spouses locked in gilded cages. Children treated not as kin, but as tools, raised by soldiers, trained to obey without question. The governor convinces themselves it is for their safety. In truth, it is desperation. The only way to keep blood from turning against them is to drain it of will, and in doing so, they become what they once despised: the cruel parent, the tyrant spouse, the monster who sacrifices family for survival. The throne always wins. For some, madness becomes too much. They abdicate, not formally, for abdication is impossible in the Imperium, but silently. They sit the throne in body only, signing whatever is placed before them, nodding at advisors, drifting like hollow shells until their death brings release. Others cling with iron teeth, so consumed by paranoia that they lash out at everyone. Servants are executed for imagined treason. Advisors vanish. Even heirs are cast aside, accused of betrayal before they can prove loyalty. Such governors rule not by power, but by terror, and their reigns end in blood, torn down by uprisings they themselves created, and a rare few endure, broken, scarred, hollowed, but enduring still. They lock their hearts away, walling off love, trust, hope. They become stone. They speak little, sleep less, and live only for duty. To their people, they are iron-willed rulers, unshakable, unstoppable, feared, and obeyed. To themselves, they are corpses, still moving, puppets of duty with nothing left inside. This is the final cruelty of the throne. Not that it kills love, not that it consumes family, not even that it drives rulers into madness or tyranny. The final cruelty is that it leaves nothing behind. No one remembers the laughter. No one recalls the warmth. When history speaks their name, it does not speak of the person. It speaks only of the governor, the office, the symbol, the throne. The person is erased, and in that erasure, the throne wins, because the greatest lie of governance is that one rules a world. The truth is simpler and darker. The throne rules the governor. It rules their family. It rules their very soul. And when they are gone, another will sit, another life consumed, another bloodline broken. The cycle never ends. Beyond that, the Imperium does not care who rules or how. And so, as the years grind forward, the governor changes, or rather is unmade. For some it is the slow petrification of the soul. They become statues long before death, carved from duty and fear. They no longer laugh, no longer weep. Their words are as measured as their steps, their faces as still as carved stone. They live only to endure, not to feel, and their people, seeing them on balconies or screens, whisper that their governor is unbreakable, incorruptible, but they are wrong. The governor is not unbreakable, they are already broken. What stands before the people is not a ruler, but a hollow vessel, a ghost in human form, sustained only by the chains of responsibility. For others, the transformation is far more violent. A tyrannoia festers, until it twists into cruelty, and cruelty hardens into tyranny. Every shadow hides betrayal, every smile conceals treason. The governor lashes out, and blood runs through the palace halls. Servants executed for imagined plots, advisors tortured for hidden schemes, even family cast into dungeons, their cries echoing against gilded walls. They convince themselves it is necessary, that only through fear can loyalty be maintained. But the truth is simpler. They are afraid of knives in the dark, afraid of poisoned calluses, afraid of the whispering crowds, the plotting nobles, the unseen agents of terror. Fear becomes their crown, paranoia their scepter, and the world trembles, not because it is ruled, but because it is strangled. Yet the Imperium does not intervene. The Adeptus Terra does not care if a governor is mad. The Monitorum does not care if a governor is cruel. The Inquisition does not care if a governor is hollow. As long as quotas are met, soldiers are sent, and faith in the Emperor is enforced, the governor's torment remains unseen, unacknowledged, irrelevant. To the Imperium, governors are not people, they are gears in the vast machine, cogs that may grind, break or bleed, but must always turn. And so, even as madness deepens, as paranoia spreads, as cruelty grows monstrous, the machine continues. Reports are stamped, seals are pressed, tides are marked as fulfilled. The galaxy does not pause for broken souls. The governor knows this. Deep down, in the marrow of their bones, they know, and that knowledge becomes the final blade. For if the Imperium does not care, then what was the point of the sacrifice? The lost children, the cold bedchamber, the silence of halls, once filled with laughter, the blood spilled in the name of survival, the soul, the hollowed, the heart petrified, the mind driven to madness. All for what? For a ledger, for a report, for a line of numbers, recorded in some distant archive that no one will ever read. The realization is unbearable, and yet it cannot be escaped. Some governors crumble beneath it, taking their own lives in chambers lined with gold, their bodies discovered beside untouched wine. Their deaths are recorded, and within days, another is appointed. The machine does not pause. Others embrace it, surrendering fully to the mask. They no longer think of themselves as people, but as extensions of the throne. They speak in decrees, eat in silence, and dream of nothing. When death comes, they do not resist, for they died long before.
And only a few find dark solace in the cruelty itself. If the Imperium does not care, then why should they? They indulge their paranoia, their hunger for blood, their desire for control. They revel in the fear of their people, the obedience carved from terror. In their madness, they whisper that they are gods, not governors, that their throne is not borrowed, but eternal. But even they are wrong, for the Imperium will care only when the gears stop turning, when tides are missed, when soldiers fail to march, when the faith of the people falters. Then and only then will eyes turn to the planet. Then will ships arrive, not to heal, but to burn. The Inquisition does not send healers, the Monitorum does not send comfort, the Ecclesiarchy does not send hope. They send fire, chains and silence. The throne is eternal, the governor is not. And so every path ends the same, whether hollow or cruel, whether statue or monster, whether corpse or tyrant. The governor is consumed. The people remember their decrees, their punishments, their quotas. The Imperium remembers only their number. Their family, if any survive, remember only the scars. The governor is forgotten as a person, only the throne remains, and the next soul steps forward. Another face, another name, another life ready to be devoured. The throne is patient, it can wait forever. When a governor falls, the world falls with them. The descent is rarely sudden. Planets do not shatter in a single breath, nor do empires collapse in one night. The ruin begins in whispers, in cracks too small to notice, in shadows that lengthen while the light fades. At first it is inefficiency, reports delayed, quotas missed, patrols reduced. The governor, drowning in fear or hollowed by despair, loses their grip on the vast machine beneath them. Officials grow lazy, emboldened by weakness. Corruption spreads like mold in damp stone. The people notice first. Markets empty sooner. Guards arrive later. Priests preach longer, but with less fire. Whispers of discontent slither through streets once drowned in hymns, yet life continues. For in the Imperium, life is always hard. A missed shipment, a bribe, a starving family, such things are normal. The people endure, they always endure. But endurance has limits. As the governor weakens, factions sharpen their knives. Noble houses scheme, each seeking advantage in the vacuum of power. Gangs grow bolder, carving out districts with blades and gunfire. Priests begin to question one another's sermons, debating faith in corners rather than uniting in the emperor's name. The planet begins to turn against itself. And then, the predators smell blood. From beyond the void, raiders drift closer, sensing weakness. Orc warbands descend in crude vessels, their laughter shaking the heavens. Eldar corsairs strike like ghosts, leaving only corpses and flames. Drukhari glide in from their shadowed realms, plucking screaming victims into the dark. Sometimes the threat is not from without, but from within. The seeds of heresy, watered by suffering, begin to bloom. A whisper here, a symbol there. Workers mutter that the emperor has abandoned them. Priests discover blasphemous texts beneath their altars. Children sing strange songs at night. By the time the governor notices, it is too late. Cults have already rooted deep, spreading through hive spires and factory warrens, promising salvation not from terror, but from the warp. And when the eye of terror stirs, when the great enemy leans close, those whispers become screams. Mutations spread, rallies turn into riots, faith becomes fire. The governor, broken and desperate, clings to their throne, sending desperate pleas to terror. But the Imperium is vast, and the pleas are small. By the time a reply comes, if it ever does, the planet is already burning. Kallax is not loud at first. It begins with empty granaries, with unpaid soldiers, with priests dragged from pulpits by mobs. Streets darken, factories still, ships vanish from orbit. The planet begins to starve, not from lack of food, but from the rot of order itself. And then, the true descent comes. Cities burn, families flee into the wastes, armies march not against invaders, but against their own people. Entire continents fracture into warring factions. In the hives, billions die in smoke and rubble. In the fields, harvests rot while soldiers trample crops into mud. The governor issues decree after decree, voice cracking, hands trembling, but no one listens. The throne has lost its grip. And yet, the Imperium does not weep. To Terra, a planet's fall is not tragedy, it is arithmetic. There are 1,000,000 worlds in the Emperor's realm. A few must fall, so that others may stand. A failed governor is not a wound to be healed, but a gear to be replaced. And so the response comes, not swift, not merciful, but inevitable. If the world is deemed valuable, the Imperium sends armies. The Astra Militarum descends in endless ranks, boots shaking the soil, guns thundering like storms. Commissars bark prayers over executions, priests raise relics over rivers of blood. Cities are reclaimed, though millions die screaming beneath rubble and fire. The planet is saved, but never healed. If the world is deemed expendable, the Imperium sends fire. Exterminatus is not a word spoken lightly, yet it is a word spoken often enough. Orbital bombardments reduce continents to ash. Virus bombs strip flesh from bone. Cyclonic torpedoes tear the planet's skin apart, until seas boil and skies burn. The governor's name is erased, the world's history turned to dust. And if the world lies too far,
If its fall does not threaten the greater machine, then the Imperium sends nothing at all. The planet is left to its ruin, abandoned to its fate. In time, it may be reclaimed, or forgotten forever. One mote of dust lost among the stars. The collapse of worlds is the echo of the collapse of men. One soul breaks, and millions follow. One throne falters, and cities crumble. The Imperium endures, but the people perish. The galaxy grinds on, but lives are ground into dust beneath its wheels. For in the Imperium of Man, no world is sacred, only the throne is eternal. Every world wears its own mask. Yet when collapse comes, the mask shatters to reveal the same truth, fragility, beneath the illusion of order. Every world is one step away from ruin. Consider the hive world. Cities the size of continents rise into poisoned skies filled with billions, who live and die stacked like bricks. A single governor sits above it all, crown gleaming, quill scratching decrees into parchment. But when that quill falters, the hive quakes. At first, the lights flicker, not everywhere, just in the lower spires, where the air is already thick with soot. Machines stall, water pumps fail, waste is left uncollected. Life, already brutal, becomes unbearable. The governor hears reports, but they are buried beneath thousands of others. By the time attention turns to the problem, the underhive has already changed. Desperation births gangs, gangs swell into armies, armies swell into cults, and the cults whisper of gods who do not demand quotas or tithes, but freedom, power, vengeance. Billions hear their call. Entire hive towers rise in rebellion, storming upward in rivers of fire and flesh. The governor looks down from their balcony and sees the city burning, but they are powerless. No decree can command starving billions. No speech can quiet the hunger of faithless mass. And so the hive falls, first into chaos, then into silence. Now consider the agri-world. Green fields stretch beyond the horizon, oceans of grain feeding entire sectors. The farmers bow their heads to the emperor, their lives measured in seasons, their faith in harvests. To rule such a world seems simple: plant, reap, tithe. But when the governor stumbles, even fertile soil withers. It begins with quotas raised too high, soldiers seizing grain meant for mouths. Families starve while silos overflow. Anger festers in the villages, whispered in barns, shouted in taverns. The governor tightens their grip, sending soldiers to seize livestock, to guard granaries, to silence voices. But the tighter the grip, the more the fields resist. Harvests are burned in rebellion. Irrigation lines are sabotaged. Farmers vanish into hills, with rifles in hand, and the planet, once the breadbasket of a dozen systems, begins to starve not from blight, but from fury. The irony is cruel. Those who grew food for millions die with empty stomachs. The governor, watching from their palace, realizes too late that hunger is not easily silenced. And then, the Forge world. Colossal machines roar day and night, their furnaces belching smoke that blots the stars. Here, life is labor. Each breath tastes of oil. Each heartbeat sinks to the rhythm of pistons and gears. The governor of a Forge world is not only ruler, but mediator, standing between the demands of terror and the will of the Mechanicus. When such a governor falters, the balance shatters. Perhaps they anger the Adeptus Mechanicus by overstepping. Perhaps they fail to meet quotas, and the priests of Mars whisper of inefficiency. Perhaps they simply lose the trust of tech priests who already see flesh as weakness. Whatever the cause, the result is the same: silence. Machines begin to fail, not suddenly, but deliberately. Repairs are delayed, shipments misplaced, systems overloaded. The factories slow, and then stop. Workers grow restless, stripped of purpose, stripped of pay, and where there is idleness, there is rebellion. But rebellion on a Forge world is no riot of fists. It is machines turned against their masters, mechs tearing through streets, drones patrolling in defiance. Civil war is fought not with words, but with technology, and soon the governor finds themselves irrelevant, a relic of flesh in a world of steel. Each world collapses differently, yet the melody is always the same. The hive drowns in rebellion. The agri starves in its fury. The forge rusts into silence. And in every case, the governor, seated on their throne, watches helplessly as the edifice crumbles. Sometimes they flee, escape ships vanish into the void carrying governors who abandon their worlds to burn. Sometimes they fight to the end, barricaded in palaces, issuing decrees no one hears, waiting for rescue that never comes. Sometimes they surrender, hoping mercy will be shown, forgetting that mercy is a language the Imperium does not speak. And sometimes, they are consumed by the very people they once ruled. There are records, whispered but never officially written, of governors torn from their thrones and cast into mobs, of rulers devoured in the dark by those who starve, of noble blood staining the fields it once claimed to own. The Imperium does not preserve these tales, for they are shameful, but the people remember, always. They remember, and when the fires die, when the hives fall silent, when the fields rot, when the machines rust, then and only then, the Imperium arrives. It arrives with soldiers, with priests, with fire, not to save, but to reclaim, not to heal, but to enforce. The world is beaten into submission, or purged into silence, and in the aftermath, when the ashes cool, another governor is chosen, another name added to the endless chain, another soul destined to break. The pattern repeats.
The machine continues. The galaxy does not pause, for to the Imperium, the collapse of worlds is not failure, it is routine. Though when a world falters, the Imperium does not send healers, it sends war. The first to arrive are often the Astra Militarum, endless regiments drawn from distant worlds, boots pounding the soil, banners raised in grim silence. They march not to protect the people, but to restore the machine. Factories must turn again, fields must grow again, faith must burn again. And if millions die to achieve it, then so be it. The Guard does not arrive as liberators, they arrive as conquerors. Cities are shelled to rubble before infantry advance. Streets are cleared by flame and bayonet. Rebellions are crushed beneath artillery, their banners drowned in blood. For the soldiers of the Guard, the people they face are not citizens, but enemies of the Emperor. Whether they are starving farmers, desperate workers, or heretical cultists, it makes no difference. Treason is treason, and treason must be burned away. Behind the Guard march the commissars, their pistols gleam, their eyes burn. They speak of duty, of loyalty, of faith. Their sermons are bullets, their punishments swift. To falter is to die. To hesitate is to be purged. They execute soldiers who break, officers who falter, and governors who beg. In their presence, there is no room for weakness, only obedience. And then comes the Inquisition. Where the Guard sees enemies, the Inquisition sees rot. They descend in silence, their agents cloaked, their authority limitless. They search not for rebels alone, but for corruption that lies beneath rebellion. Cults are dissected root to branch. Heresy is hunted, uncovered, incinerated. Families vanish overnight. Districts burn to ash, entire bloodlines erased because of whispers traced to a single heretic. To the people, the Inquisition is not savior, but phantom, a shadow that takes neighbors in the night, a storm that leaves nothing behind but ash and silence. Their presence lingers long after they depart, the memory of fear etched deeper than any decree. And sometimes when the collapse is too great, when the taint of chaos or Xenos festers too deeply, another force is unleashed. The Adeptus Astarte. Where the Guard marches in millions, the Astartes descend in dozens. Yet their presence reshapes the battlefield like a god stepping onto mortal soil. Thunderhawks scream through clouds. Drop pods split the heavens. Bolters roar, and the ground trembles beneath warriors who are not men, but giants of war. To see them is to feel awe and terror. To fight beside them is to feel small. To fight against them is to feel death. The Astartes do not negotiate. They do not govern. They cleanse. A rebellion that withstood months of Guard sieges can be shattered in a single night of space marine fury. Cults vanish in rivers of blood. Cities are reduced to rubble in the wake of their advance. And when the smoke clears, nothing remains but silence. For the Imperium, such interventions are not tragedy, they are necessary. The galaxy is vast. The enemy is endless. Mercy is weakness, and weakness is death. Better that a billion die in fire, than a single seed of heresy grow unchecked. The governor, if still alive, rarely survives such interventions. If they fled, they are hunted down, dragged from ships and executed as cowards. If they resisted, they are tried as traitors and burned in public pyres. If they endured, clinging to their throne in hollow silence, they are quietly replaced, their name forgotten. The Imperium does not honor governors, it erases them. For what matters is not who ruled, but that the world is returned to function, that tithes flow again, that soldiers march again, that faith is enforced again. The governor's fate is irrelevant, their suffering invisible, their sacrifice unrecorded. The people who survive rarely rejoice. For them, the guard is not savior, but butcher. The Inquisition is not purifier, but phantom. The Astartes are not angels, but executioners. Yet they bow, they kneel, they obey, because in the Imperium, obedience is the only currency that matters. And when the armies depart, when the ships vanish into the void, when the smoke clears and the ashes settle, the throne does not remain empty. Another governor is appointed, another life is bound to change, another name is etched onto the endless list of those who must rule and break and be forgotten. The people may whisper of the old ruler, they may curse their name or mourn their fall. But the Imperium does not whisper, it does not mourn, it does not curse, it moves forward, as it always has, as it always will. The machine continues to turn, greased with blood, and in that turning, another world is saved or damned. When the fire has burned itself out, when the guns fall silent, when the last screams fade into the smoke, silence settles over the ruins. This is the aftermath. Cities lie in rubble, towers reduced to jagged skeletons of stone and steel. The air is thick with ash, the ground is littered with corpses, some buried beneath collapsed walls, others left unmarked in streets where they fell. Rivers run black with soot, the sun itself seems dimmer, as though ashamed to look upon the devastation. And yet life stirs, it always does. Survivors crawl from the ruins, their faces hollow, their bodies broken. They scavenge food from shattered markets, water from cracked pipes. Families search for missing kin, calling names that will never be answered. Priests raise voices over rubble, chanting prayers to remind the faithful that the Emperor still sees, even through smoke. But survival is not enough. The Imperium demands order. And so, once the last shot has been fired, once the last heretic has been burned, once the last whisper of rebellion has been crushed, a new governor is chosen. Sometimes they are appointed from Terra, a distant bureaucrat with no knowledge of the world they will rule. Sometimes they are drawn from the planet itself, a noble whose loyalty has been proven in blood. Sometimes they are soldiers raised from the ashes, rewarded with a throne for obedience. But whoever they are, they inherit more than power, they inherit ruin. The task of rebuilding is not one of mercy, but of quotas. Granaries must be filled, no matter how many starve. Factories must turn, no matter how many hands bleed. Faith must be restored, no matter how many are dragged screaming into pyre. The governor is given no time to heal wounds, only to ensure the machine runs again. And so, the survivors learn quickly that nothing has changed. The banners may be new, the decrees may carry a different name, but the suffering remains. The streets are patrolled by soldiers who speak of duty, but enforce it with lashes. Families are conscripted to labor, their grief ignored in the name of quotas. Children are raised in orphanages filled with sermons, taught not to remember their parents, but to remember their emperor. The people whisper that the world feels cursed, that their sacrifices were for nothing. But in the Imperium, whispers are dangerous, and so, the whispers die. Reconstruction begins. Palaces rise again, built from stone taken from the ruin. Temples are restored, their bells ringing through streets, still stained with blood. The governor sits on a throne, once more, their crown gleaming, their voice carried through vox speakers. The world is declared stabilized, reports are filed, seals are pressed. Numbers are sent across the void, and in the archives of terror, the world is crossed off a list. Saved. Yet beneath the surface, scars remain. Families remember the soldiers who slaughtered them. Priests remember the inquisitors who silenced them. Workers remember the tithe ships that took food while their children starved. The wounds are not healed, they are buried, and buried wounds fester. It is here, in the ashes of survival, that the cycle begins again. For a world rebuilt on fear is a world built on sand. Faith enforced through fire burns quickly, but not deeply. Authority restored through executions lasts only until hunger returns. The governor, no matter how dutiful, no matter how loyal, no matter how strong, rules not through love, but through terror. And terror breeds rebellion as surely as hunger breeds famine. The cycle does not end. It never ends. One day, another whisper will rise. Another cult will spread. Another gang will sharpen its knife. And the governor, this governor, the new one, will face the same choices, the same pressures, the same inevitable breaking. And when they break, the world will burn again. The Imperium does not see tragedy in this. To them, it is efficiency. The galaxy is vast, the threats infinite. A world lost, a world burned, a world rebuilt. It is all one motion in the endless machinery of survival. The lives consumed are not lives wasted. They are fuel, fuel for the Imperium's eternity. For the people who endure, the cycle is not abstract. It is life. They are born in ruins, live in fear, and die in silence. They pray that their governor will be strong, that their world will endure, that their children will know peace. But the prayers echo into void, for strength does not last. Worlds do not endure, and peace does not belong to mankind, not in the 41st millennium. And yet, life continues. Children still laugh in ruined streets. Farmers still sow in scarred fields. Workers still sing as they labor in rebuilt factories. Priests still raise voices in hymns that echo through broken spires. Even in ashes, humanity clings to hope, not because the Imperium grants it, but because the soul of man refuses to die. Perhaps that is why the cycle continues. Not because the Imperium is merciless, but because humanity is relentless. No matter how many times a world burns, survivors remain. No matter how many governors fall, another rises. No matter how much blood is spilled, the people endure, and in their endurance, the Imperium survives. Not through strength, not through faith, not through fire, but through sheer refusal to vanish. The collapse of worlds is not the end, it is only a pause, a silence between verses, a shadow before dawn. And when dawn comes, when light returns, the world rises again, broken, scarred, forever wounded, but alive, until it falls once more. And within this endless endurance lies the truth of every planetary governor. Their lives are not their own. Their power is not theirs to wield. They are pieces upon a board so vast, so unfathomable, that even the board itself does not know its edges. A governor rises, a governor falls, and the cycle repeats. The cycle begins with fire. A new governor takes the throne. They arrive with hope, whether genuine or feigned. They swear oaths to the High Lords, bow before the banners of terror, raise prayers before icons of the Emperor. They speak of loyalty, of duty, of the sacred trust placed in them to guard their world. Their voice echoes through Vox speakers, carried across cities, still trembling from past wars. Their words are filled with confidence. Their eyes shine with certainty. But certainty is fragile, for the first reports always come swiftly. Bandits raiding supply lines, cults whispering beneath temples, tithe quotas falling behind schedule. Each message is sealed with urgency, each demand pressed with wax and sigil. The governor learns quickly that their reign is not built upon hope, but upon fire. The flames must be fed, and so they begin to burn. They burn heretics in plazas. They burn criminals in streets. They burn forests for lumber to rebuild cities. They burn fields to fertilize soil. Every act of governance is an act of sacrifice. Every decision consumes lives,
And with each sacrifice, the governor feels the weight grow heavier. But the Imperium does not care for weight. The Imperium cares only for results. The cycle continues with silence. For after the fires burn, after the punishments fall, after the blood spills into soil, there comes a stillness. The world returns to order. Soldiers patrol streets. Factories turn. Temples echo with hymns. Reports are filed and delivered. The governor sits upon their throne, gazing over their world. For a moment it feels secure. For a moment it feels theirs. But silence is never safety. Silence is only the breath before the scream. In the quiet, new dangers grow. A noble house plotting rebellion in shadow. A priest whispering heresies in confessions. A factory worker carving forbidden symbols into steel. The governor cannot see them, cannot hear them, not yet. But they are there, always there. And when the silence breaks, the fire returns. For every governor learns the truth. Their greatest enemy is not rebellion, not heresy, not invasion. It is the throne itself. The Imperium does not wait for failure to consume them, it hunts for it. Each report sent to Terra is another chain tightening around their neck. Each envoy, each inquisitor, each auditor is another set of eyes, another shadow in the chamber. A governor can endure hunger, can endure riots, can endure even invasion, but they cannot endure the gaze of the Imperium itself. For when that gaze falls fully upon them, there is no escape. The High Lords do not forgive weakness. The Inquisition does not excuse failure. The Ecclesiarchy does not tolerate faltering faith. And so the governor lives in fear, not of enemies outside their walls, but of those who granted them their crown. The cycle ends with collapse. No governor reigns forever. Some are slain in riots, their bodies torn apart in streets. Some are poisoned in palaces by rivals. Some are executed by inquisitors, their names erased from records. Some simply vanish, their disappearance marked only by silence. However it happens, it is inevitable. For in the Imperium, power is not a legacy, it is a sentence. And when the governor falls, the world trembles. Banners are torn down, statues are toppled, palaces burn. The order imposed by fear collapses in a breath. Chaos reigns again. And yet, amidst that chaos, survivors endure. And from those survivors, a new governor is chosen. The fire begins anew. The silence follows. The fear grows. The collapse arrives. The cycle continues. Since the birth of the Imperium, since the Great Crusade, since the Emperor first declared dominion over mankind, this cycle has spun without pause. Billions of governors have risen. Billions have fallen. Their names are forgotten. Their deeds erased. Their worlds dust upon the void. But the Imperium remains. This is the genius and the cruelty of the system. No governor is indispensable. No ruler is irreplaceable. They are not chosen for their greatness, but for their expendability. If they succeed, the Imperium endures. If they fail, the Imperium still endures. Their victories belong to Terra. Their failures are buried in silence. A governor is not a master. A governor is a placeholder. A governor is a shadow. And yet, within those shadows, there are moments. Fleeting moments. A governor who shows mercy. A governor who secretly feeds the poor. A governor who spares a family from the flames. Small acts that echo quietly through broken streets. Remembered not by the Imperium, but by the people. For though the Imperium does not care, humanity does. And perhaps that is the only defiance left to governor. Not in rebellion, not in glory, not in survival, but in choosing even once to be more than the mask they wear. In the end, the question lingers. Why does it suck to be a planetary governor in Warhammer 40,000? Because the crown is not a gift. It is a weight. Because the palace is not a sanctuary. It is a prison. Because power is not freedom. It is chains. Because no matter how high a governor rises, they are still bound by the same truth as the lowest worker, the poorest farmer, the most forgotten orphan. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only duty, there is only sacrifice, there is only the cycle, and the cycle never ends. And the Imperium does not pause, does not grieve, does not even remember. It moves forward, endless, consuming, eternal. This is why it sucks to be a planetary governor in Warhammer 40, because no matter how much blood you spill, no matter how much loyalty you prove, no matter how much pain you endure, your reign is never truly yours. You are only a shadow in the Emperor's endless war, a candle burning in a storm that will never end. And when your light is gone, another will replace it. The cycle will continue. The galaxy will not notice. The Imperium will not care. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no glory, there is no peace, there is no escape. Only the throne, only the cycle, only the endless silence of forgotten names.